on the radio.
Salina's #1 for country.
They don't make them like us no more.
Y93.7.
I listen loud.
Baby, turn it on.
Bring on the country. Y93.
We think of electricity just getting discontinued.
Okay, it's 4 o'clock. I will call the regular scheduled meeting of the Salina City Commission for April 20th to order. I will ask staff if the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
It has. Thank you. With that, we will do roll call.
Mayor Hoppick,
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Commissioner Franz,
Here.
Commissioner Hodges. Here. Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
Okay. Will those that are able please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get started, Mr. Scragg, would you like to go over how we're handling the
please.
technology again
Have a
today?
few housekeeping items. Scott Gardner's on the line. Just need to verify that Salina Media Connection signal is working both on cable TV and online. And you've previously confirmed that the YouTube Live is working?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm going to mute you, so if you need my attention, you're going to have to hit *9.
Okay.
So for those listening at home, we have advertised by way of our public meeting announcement and the agenda that we're using a conference calling system that allows citizens to call in and participate in the conference call. They need to dial 785-621-0800. They'll be prompted to enter a participant ID number, which is 782-956. They'll also be prompted to give their name, which they don't necessarily have to do, but they at least need to press the pound sign after that prompt. At that point, they will show up on my laptop. I'm able to note that they are in the call, and when the time for public comment comes up, the mayor can call for public comment. An individual citizen that wishes to speak can press *9. That will then place a signal on the screen that makes me aware that they wish to speak, and I'll be able to unmute them and allow them to address the city commission. So just to repeat, the number to call is 785-621-0800. The participant ID is 782-956. We don't have any executive sessions scheduled today. We have done that in the past, and our protocol, if an executive session does come up, is that we will mute the phone, we will mute the video and audio signals. The conference call will stay live, so people can stay on that call. Our motion for executive session will state a time which will return into open session. At that time, we'll return to open session, unmute the call, start the video and audio signals back up for YouTube Live and Salina Media Connection, and the callers will have not been dropped from the call. They'll be able to participate in any remaining public portion of the meeting. So I believe that covers it.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will move to Citizens Forum. I'm not sure if we have anyone on the line that would like to address the commission on something that's not on the agenda. If so, please raise your hand and Mr. Scragg will unmute you.
Yeah, anyone that wishes to speak needs to press *9. And we've got about 10 callers, and I don't see anyone.
Okay. Okay, and we have no public hearing or items scheduled for a certain time, so we will move to consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of April 13th, 2020. Item 6.2, adopt resolution number 20-7828, authorizing the city manager to renew an agreement with CCMSI Incorporated to provide workers' compensation third-party administrator services. And item 6.3, award contract for 2020 minor concrete pavement repair, project number 20018B, with the revised completion date of July 1, 2020 to Davis Concrete Construction in the amount of $29,206.85, with a $3,000 construction contingency for a total project authorization of $32,206.85.
Mayor Hoppick here. I forgot we're supposed to say our names before we talk. We're still trying to get used to that. Are there any items on the consent agenda that a commissioner would like to have removed?
This is Commissioner Davis.
Yes, I would like to remove item 6.3.
6.3, okay.
Commissioner Davis, just have a quick question on 6.2.
Okay. You want to go ahead and ask that question then?
Should I just...
Sure. I think Ms. Fisher's dialed in, so
Oh,
she'll have an
okay.
opportunity to answer as well.
The question regards page 2 of the actual service agreement, which for us are the white sheets of paper. At the bottom, the managed care service, are all of our patients who are being managed for work comp injuries through a managed care setup, or are they ever through their own physician? I didn't know when an employee would not be covered in this situation.
I believe Ms. Fisher's on the line. Yep, there you go. Natalie, you're unmuted if you'd like, if you can respond to that question.
Yes, so if I understood the question on managed care service, this is where they go back and take a look at network, and we take advantage of the negotiated network prices. And I do receive monthly bills to where we're always better than a break even here. We're, even with those fees in place, it always, so far to date, works in our advantage that we take advantage of reductions.
All right, so a injured employee would be treated as if they had insurance through our, at the same rates as our employees we get for their regular health care?
No, we would fall back to the care being provided through our work comp and approved via our work comp third-party administrator.
So in the event one of our individuals started out and had to see their own physician, that's what's called the allowable expenses. They may be able to go and see their own physician, or sometimes we'll have individuals seek chiropractic care, and they can do that up to $500. That would be taken care of. But specifically, the managed care that's being referenced here is part of the third-party administrator network that we're saying. It doesn't really have any overlap, or it's completely separate from our employees' Blue Cross Blue Shield coverage.
Okay, so it's through the administrator's network. Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Okay.
If you might describe the managed care services that the third-party administrator might provide?
Commissioner Hodges here, should we just withdraw this item?
That's where I was going, yeah. Let's, I think we're going to remove 6.2 from the consent. It became more than just a simple question, so I think.
Commissioner Franz, I would move then that we approve the consent agenda or what remains of it.
6.1.
Commissioner Davis, second.
Mayor Hoppick, we have a motion, a second, to approve consent agenda item 6.1. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that's 5-0. Okay, let's move into 5.2, although we've already been there. Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Fisher, it might be helpful if you could describe the managed care services that the third-party administrator would provide.
Sure. So completely outside of the Blue Cross Blue
Shield of Kansas coverage that we provide for an employee who enrolls in it. When a work comp injury occurs, all of the paperwork is filed through our third-party administrator, which is CCMSI, and as part of their service, that managed care service also involves them going through all of the medical bills associated with care and treatment and follow-up of the injury that occurred for the employee. And that includes both the pharmacy and the in-network medical care being provided to the individuals. And it just makes sure that we are getting those network savings. So it could be what I'm going to call, the standard run-of-the-mill type, maybe a laceration to a finger that requires some stitches. It could be something where the individual's been referred outside of our area for specialty care. But it's all of those do run through, and then they make sure that we are seeing a reduction to offset any of those fees. And it varies month to month depending on how many claims we may have and how many bill reductions have occurred. I mean, sometimes we'll see a 27-to-1 reduction. That's really, really high. It doesn't always equate to that. Sometimes it's pretty minimal, but it always pays for itself because of the network savings that we experience. If we didn't have the ability to run all of those bills through our third-party administrator, we would not have the ability for that managed care program to be in existence. So the example that I gave, let's say there's $500 incurred that we would cover that maybe we didn't know it was a work comp claim, or it wasn't initially on our radar, or someone went to a chiropractor, whatever those scenarios might be before they were deemed work comp and funneled through. We wouldn't have the ability to take advantage of those network savings when the individual's providing care on their own, and then we would cover up to $500 of what we call the unauthorized care. But the managed care services come back to CCMSI doing all of the bill reviews on our behalf and making sure we're getting those network savings.
All right, so a local physician might then belong to both networks, but it would be contracted differently going through the work comp administrator.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, and in addition to the physician, it might be the pharmacies have two different networks that they belong to as well. We have MedTrack is our prescription benefit manager, and then the pharmacy network services are going to be a different contract for those specifically being accounted for through work comp.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff on 6.2? Okay, I guess since we've discussed that, any comments from the public? There, Mike?
Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? Please press star 9. I don't see anyone.
Okay, I will bring it back to the commission for a motion.
Carl Ryan speaking. Mayor, I move we adopt resolution number 207828, authorizing the city manager to review an agreement with CCMSI, Inc. to provide workers' compensation third-party administrator, TPA services.
Commissioner Davis, second.
Okay. Mayor Hoppick, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 20-7828. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Okay, can we get Mr. Kowach on the
Yes, Jim,
phone
you're
for
unmuted.
6.3?
Are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Hodges, did you have a question for Mr. Kowach on this to begin?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hoppick. Yes, I did. Commissioner Hodges here. I had a question in regard to the failure of the 9th Street surface by Crawford. So the contractor is going to be replacing the surface, but we are going to be correcting at our cost the subgrade. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Understanding that this is obviously a very, very, very old street, who was the responsible party for the engineering? Did we engineer that?
Yeah, this is Jim Kowatz, the Public Works Director. The city did the engineering and let a multiple number of contracts do the tree removal, the tree planting, the curb and gutter contract, and then the mill and overlay. The mill and overlay was strictly just a mill and overlay. And once we milled the project, as you recall, traffic drove on that milled surface for quite a while, and it exposed some areas that did have some problems, and we tried to patch all of those and paid the contractors some additional money to make those repairs. There were a half a dozen cases, or there's some spots up and down the road that, as you know, it's 100-year-old bricks. They seemed to be all right when we overlaid them, but they didn't last. So the contractor is required to replace the asphalt portion of the mill and overlay. But since it's our street and we were responsible for the base, we're responsible for the cost to make those repairs.
Thank you. Commissioner Hodges, are there other areas where we're going to anticipate needing to correct the subgrade?
Well, there's a half a dozen places on 9th Street, small patches, and there's one pretty good-sized one. And there is one, I believe, on Crawford from a project 2 years ago that is similar in nature. It's still under warranty, but the base has failed. And it's not a brick street, and I don't have the exact location on it, but I know that the majority of it is along 9th Street, which was just a mill and overlay project.
Thank you, Commissioner Hodges. So all of the subgrade that needs to be repaired on 9th Street is going to be repaired, and so, you know, unless we have new failures, the project should be closed out and completed. All of the locations where we're having issues will be repaired.
Yeah, for the work that we did on 9th Street last year, 2019. Now, the bulk of this year's project was intended to repair some streets that we were going to either do an ultra-thin bonded asphalt surface, a mill and overlay, or a microsurfacing. The microsurfacing contract, because of the expense and the cost and the current situation, has been postponed until later this year in case we get some additional money, as well as the mill and overlay project. It's not expected to get done, but if we were to get some federal dollars, we would go ahead and do those projects. So the mill and overlay that we had intended to patch is still included in the patching quantities. The mill and inlay quantities for UBAS, which we're going to continue with, are still in the quantities. And I misspoke a minute ago. Actually, microsurfacing has been canceled for this year. So those were the quantities that were actually taken out of the project from the initial presentation of it.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Hodges, just one last question. And I don't know if this is for Mr. Kowach or for Mr. Scruggs, but I know that we had some subgrade issues on Crawford at Roach. Is this similar to what the failure that we experienced in that location?
This is Jim Kowach, Public Works Director. No, the concrete pavement replacement, the removal we did, and did a concrete pavement replacement around that busy intersection is completely different than 9th Street. 9th Street is the old brick roadway with an old concrete base, and as you know, we carried traffic on it for quite a while, and the old bricks and were exposed to the weather. We did have, as you recall, a wet year last year, so we
right, and I understand
the subgrade,
right.
And it didn't present itself until we went through another winter, and the new asphalt surface on it was showing we believe, problems with the base. It's not necessarily the asphalt surface. So the contractor is going to replace the asphalt as part of their warranty, but as far as taking care of the road underneath it, it's the city's responsibility.
I understand. Thank you for that answer, Commissioner Hodges. Continuing, but just in terms of the work that we had to do at Crawford and Roach, that was also a subgrade issue that we had to go back and repair after a pretty significant paving project on that stretch of street. Is that correct? Or what? I guess why were those repairs made? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I have another question.
That's all I have. Thank you, gentlemen.
Commissioner Davis?
Question for Mr. Kowach. Yeah, Commissioner Davis. For the roads that plan to be microsurfaced later this year, which were removed from our year-long project, would delaying any of these patches cause those roads to deteriorate to the point that they would require a larger project to fix them next year?
Jim, did you hear that?
Yes.
Probably didn't use the right technical terms, but
Most of the streets that we planned on surfacing this year, as you recall, we did continue the pavement sealing or the crack sealing project, and those projects, the cracks were blown out, and new sealant was placed in the joints in the cracks, and that will help keep some of the water out of the subgrade. The concrete patching that was to follow is just a few isolated locations, and if we need to make temporary repairs to those, we should be able to do that with our own staff this year or this coming year. And it should be able to go another year without any substantial concern before it's overlaid.
all right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Jim? Okay, Mike, do we have any callers on the line that would like to participate?
Caller wishes to address the commission, please press star 9. And I see none.
Okay, with that, I will bring 6.3 back to the commission.
Commissioner Davis, Mayor Hoppeck, I move we award the contract for 2020 minor concrete pavement repair project number 20018B with a revised completion date of July 1st, 2020 to Davis Concrete Construction in the amount of $29,206.85 with a $3,000 construction contingency for a total project authorization of $32,206.85.
Commissioner Ryan, second.
Mayor Hoppeck, we have a motion and a second to award contract for the 2020 minor concrete pavement repair. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. That moves us into administration. 7.1.
Item 7.1, Salina Animal Shelter Crematorium. 7.1A, authorize the repair of the Salina Animal Shelter Crematorium. And 7.1B is resolution number 20-7829, amending the City of Salina comprehensive fee schedule.
Okay, Mr. Cotton. Seeing if his, try it and see if it's on.
Doesn't green.
Yep, I think you're.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hoppeck and members of the Commission. Today I come before you to request approval to repair the crematorium at the Salina Animal Shelter and approve setting new fees to help offset the cost of future operations and repair of the unit. The first crematorium was authorized on October 23, 1995, and was purchased to help alleviate issues with disposing of euthanized animals and to eliminate the practice of disposing of animals at the landfill. This unit cost $20,000, with another $25,000 spent in facility remodel and architect fees. This unit was relocated to the new shelter, which opened June 27, 2000. In 2003, this unit was approved for replacement due to ongoing maintenance issues and being too small to handle the demand. That unit was approved in the amount of $41,505 with an additional $19,900 for the installation. This unit is the BLP 500. It was designed for medium-sized veterinarian facilities. It has a maximum load size of 500 pounds. It has been in operation for 17 years and has had regular maintenance during this time. The last major work done to the unit was performed in July of 2013, where similar work was performed, but not quite as extensive. At this time, staff is requesting authorization to utilize $30,000 from the Animal Shelter Donation Fund to make the necessary repairs to the unit. This account currently has a fund balance of $549,000. The low bidder on the project is National Crematory out of Oklahoma City in the amount of $30,000. Additionally, staff would like to ask for the approval of Resolution 20-7829 to amend the City of Salina comprehensive fee schedule schedule to include new cost recovery fees for the disposal of animal remains. The practice of animal services staff traveling to local veterinarian offices to pick up remains was originally codified via Ordinance 80-8794 on May 12, 1980. Staff would like Commission to consider eliminating this practice due to the amount of time it takes for staff to go to each vet office to pick up remains. Some offices have called multiple times in one day to staff to come to the facility to remove remains. If the Commission would like to keep this practice in effect, staff would like to increase this fee from the current charge of $10 per trip to $16 per trip to help cover staff time to do so. Staff would also like to charge a drop-off fee of $8 for staff time to unload the remains if the veterinarians bring the remains directly to the animal shelter. This fee would cover moving the remains to the freezer and logging the remains so that we can begin tracking the number of disposals. This is a practice that has not been used in the past, but staff feels that accurately tracking the number of bodies disposed per year needs to begin. Additionally, staff would like to see the fee to dispose of the bodies raised from $5 to $17 to help offset the cost of disposal. As you can see from the attached table, factoring in staff time, utilities, repair, and replacement, that estimated average cost is $18,265 per year to operate. Finally, staff would like to eliminate the practice of offering private cremations. There's a private company out of Junction City, Professional Cremation Services, that offers this service in a much smaller crematorium that is set up for this purpose. The unit in the animal shelter is much larger, and the way in which it is designed makes it very difficult to get pure remains back to the owners. This is due to the way in which the floor is laid in this unit. The floor is made up of bricks and not one smooth surface. Short of vacuuming out the entire unit after each burn, there's no way to ensure that the remains are 100% pure for the client. At this time, I have Monique Hawley here from the shelter. She may be able to answer any questions that I'm not able to.
Okay. Mayor Hoppick here. I will open it up to questions from the Commission.
Well, this is Commissioner go ahead.
I had a question. What's the total number of animals that we cremate yearly? I saw the 248 private cremations and 212 veterinary cremations, and I just wondered, that gets you to 460, and I was wondering, since we're a no-kill shelter, how much additional, I would assume that we would be counting on unclaimed animals like roadkill or wildlife or owner-surrendered animals that are euthanized in the shelter. I was just wondering what our total number of animals euthanized at the shelter is right now.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we were going to start logging them. We haven't actually tracked all those in the past. You mentioned the roadkill and the wildlife. We've never tracked that in the past, and so now we're going to start. The average number of 20 is the number that Monique was able to come up with based off her experience. But again, we've never actually logged them all, and we're going to start doing that.
Okay. Commissioner Hodges here again.
I'm just asking for my own curiosity. Is the crematory still able to function at this point?
I've personally inspected the crematorium. The walls are collapsing. The back wall is almost completely collapsed. It can operate, but it can only operate with physical presence to monitor the unit the entire time it's running so as to be safe. So it is not in good condition.
I mean, obviously we need, Commissioner Hodges, obviously we need to get this fixed as soon as possible. My only question, remaining question to you or to animal shelter staff would be, I'm assuming that we'll expect to see a reduction in the use of the crematorium. The service that comes over from Junction City charges $8 an animal to pick up at this point, and $10 an animal to pick up, and if we're actually charging the $8 drop-off fee for the veterinarians, there's not much incentive for them to do that, and that may be what we're trying to do is disincentivize the veterinarians from using the service. I mean, is that what we're trying to do? I mean, just limit it to animal shelter use only so that we're not trying to do things for provide a service for private veterinary providers.
This is Mike Scragg. I was involved in kind of the math and the preparing the recommendation, and I can understand the characterization to disincentivize. I think our intent is more at cost recovery, recognizing that this might actually be a service that has merit in the community, and there's someone that's currently providing it at a lesser cost. But we were just trying to recover our costs, and in all honesty, I've got a little bit of concern about understating our staff cost at just the hourly rate and not benefits and other things. So it wasn't so much disincentivizing as cost recovery.
And something else I might add, Commissioner Hodges, is that the unit in Junction City is a much smaller unit. So we're firing up a very large unit for an animal that may be 3 pounds, maybe as much as 150 pounds, but either way, we're firing up a very large unit, which adds to the wear and tear of that unit, which is one of the reasons why we're in the condition we are with the current crematorium.
Mayor Hoppick, I have a question for staff probably. I noticed on here that you asked to increase the fee to pick up remains from 10 to 16, and it said on there, if commission deems this practice still viable. I really want to ask staff, if more than me is based on the time to do that, would you prefer to only have drop-off, or are you okay with your staff having to go out and do the pickups?
I would prefer the drop-off, frankly, because we just don't have the amount of hours in the day to go to each vet and pick up. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes, but when that person that's in that truck is getting called out on a loose dog or hit by a car animal or something like that, then it's really hard to, try and do two things at once. And I don't have staff to have one truck go do pickups and another truck to go do calls.
Mike Scragg, I would add that staffing at the animal shelter has been, something that we've had to pay close attention to for a long time because they're pulled in multiple directions 7 days a week. And as we start to talk about staffing measures in response to COVID-19, it's going to get worse instead of better. We're asking all of our departments to do more try to keep up. I shouldn't say more with less. Try to keep up or provide some baseline service with less staff. So it's going to be even more difficult in the near future, I expect.
Yeah, because
Commissioner Franz.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Franz.
A point of clarification in the way I am reading the sheet, what it says in terms of the numbers of services we provide, there's 248 private cremation services, and then it goes on to say there's 212 times that we do that in terms of what we pick up from the veterinarians. Now, what I think I understand is that each of those 212 pickups from the veterinarians might be one animal or it might be 10 animals, so it's much more than 212 animals being involved there. It may be 1,000 out of that 212, and that's the piece that we don't know for sure. And you're estimating that there's an average of 20 a week. So okay, just a point of clarification, because it sounded to me like some of the discussion was focused on there's only about 500 cremations, which is probably true, but half of those are multiple animals. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hodges, that totally makes sense, Commissioner Franz.
That and much more understandable. My final question is, what does a new crematorium cost? Would we be better if the walls are collapsing? Would we be better off looking at a completely new unit that might serve our needs better and not be so large? Because
a new
you indicated that the size of the current unit makes it pretty inefficient.
Well, the size of the current unit makes it inefficient for private cremations. However, for large, I'll use the term roadkill and wildlife, it makes perfect sense to be able to run that many. Now, the cost to replace a new unit, we have pricing on that. It's about $75,000 for the modern version of what we have. I will also tell you that I had a conversation the other day with a manufacturer of crematoriums, and they say that some animal shelters actually have a large one and a smaller one for the private cremains. However, adding another unit to our facility would also cost extensive reconstruction and more architecture work for the facility. So I don't think, given our current financial situation, that's the direction we can afford to go. I mean, I guess we have the animal shelter donation account. We could always hit that if you wanted to, but adding another smaller crematorium would probably be the way to go, the direction that you're thinking of.
So Mike Scragg here, two things in that regard. The cost breakdown that we provided includes a repair cost, an annual estimated repair cost, as well as a replacement cost. So that $3,920 figure over 20 years is intended to reflect the purchase price of a crematorium and the useful life if we conduct routine repair. So we've tried to factor that in. And with respect to a small crematorium for private services, the concern there is just the on-demand service expectation, and we're not staffed for that.
Commissioner Franz, a follow-up to that, would this be deemed a routine repair, or is this kind of a reconstruction?
This is actually a reconstruction of the internal unit. Yes,
so we
sir.
expect it to last another 10 or 15 years, I would
Yes, sir.
imagine.
We'll still have routine maintenance. The 2013 rebuild project was not near as extensive, and it was about just under $10,000.
Commissioner Davis, I was going to ask if, even if we had the smaller crematorium, if we had the staff and the time available to, because it looked like at the current fee, that might actually be a revenue-generating service. And I hate the way that sounds, but
It absolutely would be a revenue-generating service. Again, the current unit with the bricks, it's difficult to get all the ashes. There have been times where the animal shelter has been working, they didn't have the time to load the crematorium, that I've actually had to pull staff from the field house or from building services to load the crematorium. So we are not staffed for it.
Right. So, but if staffing was not an issue, that would be a viable economic approach to consider? I don't know what the smaller ones cost,
The smaller ones are I want to say, this is purely off talking to this one gentleman. I didn't put it in the staff report, $35,000 to $50,000 for a smaller unit.
Commissioner Ryan here, and you would have the extensive remodeling or even
Yes,
a
sir.
separate building to provide that. I guess
Yes, sir.
I'd just make the comment that I think the marketplace is prepared to take up those individual cremations without us being involved in that.
Commissioner
Mike
Davis,
Scragg, while that number is noticeably high, the $125, if you account for the annual number, salary and wages, and a new unit and maintenance of that new unit, I don't know that it would be doing good to break even for us, and
Right.
I don't know that it would be net out very positive.
all right. Commissioner Davis, just one last question. Do we know if is it Professional Cremation Services injunction, they have the capacity to handle the load here from Salina?
They do. As a matter of fact, since we put this in the budget, we have been contracting with them for all private remains for the last year. We have not done hardly any ourselves because of the condition of the unit.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from any other commissioners? Mr. Scragg, is there anyone that would like to weigh in on this from the public?
If anyone wishes to address the commission, please press *9 now. I recognize everybody on the call, and none of them raised their hand.
I guess, Mayor Hoppick, one of the things, as we look at this, I think after hearing from the director and from Monique that perhaps we want to do away with the pickups from the veterinarians, and I don't know, I guess we ought a little discussion on that if I had any input from the fellow commissioners?
Well,
Mike Scragg, just as a clarification, the way the resolution, the amendment to the fee structure is written, it just provides for drop-off services and cremation services. So if that's your intention, it's not necessary to amend it.
It does, because when I read the staff report, it made me think that it was,
That's why I clarified.
Okay.
And it's a policy decision that you, as the governing body, certainly can discuss and provide direction. But as it's written, there's a $8 drop-off fee and a $17 cremation fee, and there is no pickup fee.
okay.
And
I guess maybe reading the blue sheet, I focused on that, so, okay. That's what I would like to see happen, but I wanted to make sure that the fellow commissioners were okay
Commissioner
with
Dave,
that.
just to dovetail on that, were the local veterinarians canvassed? I mean, is this going to produce unnecessary hardship for them?
We have not spoken to the vets. However, the gentleman from Professional Cremations has been delivering animals to the shelter for most of the vets in town. So the practice of dropping off at the shelter has been going on for the last year. So we haven't made a lot of runs this past season. They've been being dropped off, hence the $8 drop-off fee, so we can accommodate for staff time to unload them.
Okay.
Commissioner Ryan, are most of those drop-offs, are those people requesting individual cremations and the ashes returned to them individually, not commingled?
There has been occasion where there could be 10 bodies in the vehicle, and one of them is a private, and the rest of them are just for mass. That has happened. It doesn't happen very often, but that's sometimes it's cheaper for them to bring everything all at once rather than us come get that private.
I understand that. I guess I was wondering if the vets were receiving more requests to handle those animals individually, or if they were just disposing of the animals on behalf of I mean, my dogs, I wanted all of them back.
Right.
And I'd like to know they were my dogs.
Yeah, I don't know the number. We haven't really consulted with the vets, so I'm not sure what the numbers of people dropping off are.
in part because they may be getting service elsewhere.
If they request the private cremation, then that animal goes to Junction City and it's cremated there. It's not commingled.
It doesn't come to us.
Commissioner Davis, one last question. From a procedural basis, for the new resolution, is it enough to simply not list the services that we're no longer continuing, or do we have to state that we're discontinuing services?
I think we're fine just setting the fee structure up, and staff can administer the policy accordingly. Sorry, Mike Scragg.
Okay, we have, I believe we probably need two motions that we need, one dealing with the repair of the crematorium and the other adopting the fee schedule. Do we?
Mayor, I would move that we authorize the repair of the crematory services as bid by National Crematory in the amount of $30,000.
Commissioner Franz, second.
Mayor Hoppick, we have a motion and a second to authorize the repair of the crematorium services as bid by National Crematory in the amount of $30,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. That leads us to resolution number 20-7829.
Commissioner Franz here, Mayor Hoppick, I would move that we adopt resolution number 20-7829, amending the City of Salina comprehensive fee schedule to include new cost recovery fees for the disposal of animal remains. And my understanding is that is for drop-off services only.
Commissioner Davis, second.
Mayor Hoppick, we have a motion to adopt resolution number 20-7829. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that leads us to 7.2.
Item 7.2, consider contract to chip seal Salina Municipal Solid Waste Landfill roads and authorize the use of the Salina Municipal Solid Waste Landfill fund balance for unbudgeted road repairs at the landfill.
Okay.
Mr. Kowach should be filing in.
Okay.
Here it is.
I never thought that landfill discussion would be an uplifting switch from another topic.
That's good stuff.
It's good.
Okay, Jim, thank you.
Mayor, Commissioners. Yes, as you remember, we had some work that we did at the landfill last year. It was cell construction. It was a couple $1 million, and we did some repair work to that haul road from the office clear out to the active cell. As part of the project, we patched up what we thought we needed or what we could afford and went through the rest of the summer. And I mentioned once that we did have kind of a wet year last year, the flood year, and lots of impacts to not only the landfill roads, but the roads around the city. And by the end of the season, which is after we put our budget together and all our projects, we thought we really need to do something to help preserve this road. And one of the best preservation tools that we have is just a simple chip and seal, where you squirt hot asphalt down and you roll rocks into it, and then you embed them about a third of the way, and it gives you a nice driving surface with plenty of friction, but then it seals up every crack in the surface of the roadway, so it keeps a lot of the water out. What we called for here was actually a double prime and seal, where you use a little bit larger aggregate the first time, seal up the road, kind of smooths up all the bumps and ridges from a patched road, and then you go over it again, you put a fresh layer of hot asphalt and smaller rocks, and you think about stacking marbles, and the little rocks kind of go in the voids of the big rocks, and it makes a nice packed surface that keeps the water out, and then it also smooths it up as far as the driving surface. It's just a really cost-effective tool that we use for pavement maintenance. We had not budgeted for it, but we knew we had some funds in the operating account for the landfill, and it is an enterprise fund that is expected to pay its own bills. So we put a project together and knew we had a pavement sealing job this year. We opted to advertise this one separately, just because we knew that it was separate funding. There may be separate questions, and we didn't necessarily want to hold up the other sealing job that we were going to do on city streets. Unfortunately, because of the financial impacts, the sealing for the city streets has been canceled because the funds for it come out of the sales tax and the general fund primarily. We evaluated the road. We put together it would seal the road out to the cell, but it would also, there's a service area that customers use, and then just a real small parking lot that would also get this same prime and seal treatment. The only drawback is typically we don't use this on curb and gutter streets because it does build up the roadway just a little bit, and you do have some loose rocks that until you get it embedded and kind of packed in, and you have to sweep it and maintain it. It's more of a country road kind of treatment. So we've used it on a few of our streets in town that don't have curb and gutter, which is what we have out in the country with the landfill. There were two bidders on the project. APAC Shears Division here in town was the low bidder at $144,000 for the work. We hadn't really budgeted for the work, but we felt like it was really needed and necessary to help preserve the patching, the full depth patching that we did last year with asphalt. But the question came into being as far as how you're going to pay for it. Well, we wanted to pay for it out of the landfill funds. And when you talk about the landfill funds, you have to be very specific because we have fund balance and reserve balances, and I wanted to explain those just a minute. We've got a sanitation reserve fund, and its balance is about $1.7 million. And as you recall, that was the reserve fund that we were going to use for the new automated carts, a portion of those sanitation funds. Sanitation and solid waste are two separate accounts and two separate departments. The sanitation fund supports the collection side of it. The solid waste fund supports the landfill side of it. So we've got two different funding accounts or enterprise funds. Sanitation was $1.7 million. On the solid waste side, we've got two different funding accounts. One is the capital reserve fund. It's also at about $1.7 million. That $1.7 million is to use to replace the very expensive equipment that we use at the landfill. As you recall, some of those compactors are $800,000 to $900,000. We went through the schedule of those, and I'm prepared to go through it if necessary, but we won't need a new piece of equipment or a rebuilt piece of equipment out there for a couple years, and they're spaced every few years, that we expect to be able to replace all the equipment we need in the next 6 years with the available fund balance. And there is additional funding that gets put into that fund annually. But through 2031, we will have, if replaced as scheduled, we will have replaced all 7 pieces of equipment, replaced or rebuilt all of our equipment out there for about $2 million. That's our estimate, and we have 1.75 or roughly in our account that we think the capital reserve fund is fine. Now we have a solid waste reserve fund of also $4.7 million. That $4.7 million includes the sanitation fund, which is $971,000, and that was specifically set aside several years ago for those projects that were to divert materials from the landfill, or specifically or specified for projects that had an environmental impact and improved those types of things for the city. It's in the same fund, but it doesn't have its own fund. It's just a sub-account of the $4.7 million. And because we quit doing venture grants back in 2012, that fund has gradually increased to where it's $971,000. That $971,000 can be used for the items that were specified, and it goes up about $85,000 a year because there's $1 a ton that is allocated towards that use. Now there are a lot of major expenses on the horizon for the landfill, and I tried to go through those in sequence to explain the capital expenditures that we're planning for the landfill. We just completed Cell 20, and the funding for it was about $2 million. We built it in 2019. We're fluffing it or putting the finishing touches on the soft materials in the bottom of it to protect the clay liner. But that landfill is expected, that cell is expected to last about 5 years, and we're on a 5-year replacement cycle as far as the cells, the size cells that we're building. So that would, the next cell, if you look at the map that's included, I just realized before I came down here, we show the L-shaped pattern that we're constructing right now. Cell 21 is just south of Cell 20. It's actually not shown on the map, but Cell 21 is the next planned one. It would be done 5 years from now. We would design it 1 year and then build it the next year. That cell is going to be a little bit more expensive than the past cell because it also includes some work on the stormwater pond and detention area right there on the south side of the landfill. So the landfill work would be bonded for 5 years. The stormwater detention pond work is for the benefit of the entire landfill and could be bonded for a much longer period of time. Could be bonded for 15 to 20 years. So that, when we ran our calculations, that construction for it may impact the tipping fees by like $1 a ton if we choose to do it that way. Look, landfill closure and post-closure is something that we've talked about with you folks several times. That if you look at the map that's included, the old pre-subtitle D landfill that's right in the middle of the page has been closed. Cell 1 has been closed and 2A has been closed. And by closed, they have a clay cap and several feet of topsoil placed over them, and they're closed for good. You know, they're to contain the material or debris that's inside the landfill. 2B to the west to 4 is still, they're seeded, and they have grass growing on them, but they're not to their ultimate configuration, so they haven't been totally closed. The state requires you to keep track of the cost to close those cells. So 2B through 4, and then as we head south, the numbering changes. We went south instead of north, so we're into 19, 20, and 21. Those cells will eventually need to be closed as well. So we've got a closure cost of the cells that we have open that have been inactive for 5 years or more of a little over $8 million right now. Closure costs of $8 million. Now, once you close it, you still have to take care of it. The dirt will settle. You have to level it up. That there's post-closure costs of about $150,000 a year. So when we talk about closure, post-closure costs, you need to plan for those expenses. Now, KDHE requires that, or they look at our books to make sure we're financially sound and we have the means to close those. If for some reason, you know, we were told to close them, we'd have 3 years to do it, but do we have the financial means to do it? So they analyze our books every year. They look at not only the reserve balance the landfill has, but the reserve balance the city has, their bonding capacity, their size. They do kind of a complete look at the audit just to see if the city's good for it. And they don't really give you guidelines on how much you can have open. It's just you have to be good for it. And I say that could happen anywhere from 0 to 150 years is because different owners, some close them up right away, some wait until the end to close them. But the longer you wait, the bigger your dollar value is going to be in the future someday. So if you waited till the very end, you'd have a really big number, and you'd have to have the financial capacity to do that all at once. So eventually it'll catch up to us. So we've talked about closure and post-closure is a major expense that we need to start thinking about. The other thing that's on the horizon because of environmental concerns is the regulation that causes us to collect the methane gas that's produced in the landfill itself. Once we reach a certain level, you're required to install a methane gas collection system, and then you can either flare that gas, or you can use it to operate equipment, or you can sell it if you have an available pipeline. So there's things that can be done with the gas once you've collected it, but you can't, it's like a hothouse gas, or it's something that is to be concerned with. It's better to burn it off than to just let it emit. So we don't expect to reach those levels at our next interval. They check it every 5 years. But if you look at our curve, we're going to be really close in 10 years. We may not reach that level, or we've kind of had a change of heart as far as the specifications in the federal government. At one time, they were talking about lowering the criteria as far as when we would need to collect the gas. Under the current administration, they've kind of dialed back the EPA. They're less stringent than they were, and the talk of lowering the limits has kind of went away. So for the last 2 years, we haven't heard any talk of actually lowering the limits. So we're planning on, at least for now, the limits that are in place, which we would expect to be close to meeting in 10 years. The costs of that collection system are roughly $6 million. The $6 million is, the $150,000 is to maintain the landfill collection system, not the post-closure costs. Post-closure costs are about $80,000 a year. I was going off my memory and it failed again. So In addition to the landfill gas collection system, you start talking 10 years from now, and you're into the next cell construction 5 years after the one I just brought up. So then we would go through a cycle of about a $2 million, $2.5 million landfill cell being due in about 2030. So if you've been doing the math, the numbers I've just went through add up to a lot more than $4.7 million. So as I indicated in the blue sheet, that's a whole lot of information about what we had intended to bring back to you later this summer as far as the financing for the landfill. It doesn't take away from the need to do a $140,000 chip and seal on the road this year. We have talked about the probability or possibility of increasing our tipping fees in the next year or two to start building these funds. And then also, because they are separate and significant, also talked about dedicating certain funds to certain areas, whether it's closure, post-closure, or the landfill gas system, or even new cell construction. So there's an awful lot as far as the financing with the landfill. We've got some big decisions and some big dollars coming up. Last year, the solid waste fund balance grew by over $700,000 from 3.9 to 4.7 million. As you recall, we've also started collecting some tipping fees, and there's an agreement with the county to help surface the roads or make sure the roads that are accessing the landfill, we're participating and partnering with the county to maintain those. So we've increased the tipping fees this past year to account for part of the landfill fee for the county. We've increased the tipping fees roughly 2 to 3% a year, just based on inflation and the cost of doing business. So current tipping fees are about $36 a ton, which is in the lower third, the most economical as far as the other Subtitle D landfills, municipal landfills in the state. Now we've got I guess I opened a can of worms or brought up a lot of information, but really we're here to talk about the road. We want to take care of the road, protect our investment. We got some really good bids. We had 2 bidders. Both bidders have done work for us in the past. We'd like to do it later this year. Typically a hot season type of project. They like to do it in August or September. So we'd like to get it approved and do it later this year. It's a $144,000 project with about a 5% or $5,000 contingency, or about 3.6%. So it brings it to a nice round number of about 150. But we think it's necessary. So your choices are to approve the contract as awarded, approve the contract with amendments, postpone approval, or give us further direction. So I stand for questions.
Question from the commissioners?
Commissioner Franz here. I don't want to get into all this stuff because I'm fairly sure that there's more information there than you're prepared to share. But I do think that this whole business of the landfill condition and future financial projections with all the projects we have coming up is something that would deserve a future study session to go through in some detail, because it is, when you're doing this, you kind of feel like you're on a treadmill. You're building a cell, you're paying for a cell, you're building another one, and sometimes I don't know, how many cells are we actively using now?
We're finishing up 19, and then I think, getting close to finishing it up. We've been fluffing cell 20 since last fall, and that's putting, you try to sort out your trash so you don't have any large pipes or projectiles or things that will damage the clay liner that would make all of the expense to seal it up not work. So you try to fluff it up, put softer stuff in the bottom 10 to 15 feet, and then work your way up from there.
Anyway, I guess my point is rather than get into all this detail stuff about the future obligations of the fund, that's probably better reserved for a future study session and give the staff time to prepare for that, as well as give us updates on what kind of fund balances we have in the various set-asides, and there's several of them. And so I think, that being said, the road makes sense. The chip and seal, as I understand it, works fairly well for low-speed, low-traffic roads, which this certainly would be. And I presume, since this road carries fairly heavy vehicles, albeit at a slow speed, that weight-bearing capacity is designed into the base and not into the surfacing.
That's correct. The chip and seal project doesn't necessarily add significant structure or ability to carry weight. It just keeps the water out of the base. It's the kind of thing, though, that especially out in the country where you're not worried about your curb and gutter, we could do this now, and then we could do it again in 7 or 8 years. And if you're adding, 3/4 of an inch now, and 7 or 8 years, you add 3/4 of an inch. Say you do get a wet spot and you have to patch it, but you're able to maintain it relatively cheaply compared to the other bituminous alternatives that we had for overlaying roads. So if you take care of it in the long run, it'll cost less doing this.
Mike Scragg here. Staff agrees that there's more discussion to be had in the study sessions, a good format for that. I asked Mr. Kowach and Jim Teutsch to at least address the fund balances as we look at spending this down, and I think they had 4, 6, maybe 8 more pages to this blue sheet in the first draft. They definitely have a lot more information for you, and they're ready to talk in greater detail about it.
Mayor Hoppick, Jim, besides the roads, I noticed it talked the parking lot, so we're also chip sealing this, I call it parking lot / drop-off area also?
Yeah,
everything
that's
inside
Jim
the green.
Kowach, Public Works Director. We call it the convenience area. It keeps people, in an area where they can unload, stay clean, not get their tires popped with debris. And there's a convenience area, and then there's this real small parking lot on the east side of the building that, will hold 8 or 10 cars that would be included in that.
That's what it appeared from the picture. I want to make sure, so, okay. Okay, any other questions for staff? If not,
I do see one subject matter staff member that dialed in as Mr. Kowach was talking, so City Engineer Dan Stack, if you have anything that you want to add, please press *9 and I can unmute you. Okay, looks like maybe he's just monitoring the conversation. If there's any citizens that wish to address the City Commission, please press *9. Okay, I don't see any.
okay. With that, I would bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Hoppick, I move to approve use of the solid waste fund balance to fund a chip seal contract at the Salina Municipal Solid Waste Landfill and award the chip seal contract APAC Kansas Incorporated Shears Division, Salina, in the amount of $144,805.80 with a $5,194.20. That's a 3.6% construction contingency and a total project authorization of $150,000. This is Commissioner Davis.
Commissioner Franz, second.
Commissioner Hodges, second.
Okay, Mayor Hoppick, we have a motion and a second, and I'm just going to abbreviate this to fund a chip seal contract at the Salina Municipal Solid Waste Landfill and award the contract to APAC Kansas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 5-0. Okay, we do not have any development business at this time. I would ask Mike Scragg to address our special meeting that we are having Wednesday at 4 o'clock, if you would do that for me, please.
Thank you. Mike Scragg, 4 p.m. You, last Monday, asked staff to look at staffing proposals in response to COVID-19 financial impacts and offered either today or a special meeting, and I pledged to you that we'd make our best effort to bring it to you today. And as the week went on, it was necessary to get with department heads, and we kind of finalized things yesterday. But I didn't want to give you or employees too much short notice in terms of getting the information out and having an opportunity to look at it. So I reached out to you as the governing body toward the end of last week and suggested a special meeting, which we scheduled for 4 p.m. on Wednesday of this week. So we'll be back in this room, same format. We have just this afternoon completed financial analysis and a PowerPoint presentation, which I've shared with you and will have delivered to Commissioner Hodges. I intend to email that to all city employees so that they have it in advance, and we'll coordinate with the city clerk's office to get it added to the website and Laserfish. I would tell you at this point that PowerPoint presentation is kind of intended for a broader audience than just you as the governing body. There's going to be quite a bit of information in there that you're already familiar with, but from the feedback I've been getting from the general public and employees, I wanted to be sure to try to kind of encapsulate the topic and kind of revisit some of the information we've already provided you, as well as answering questions that are coming up. So it is a little bit of a question and answer, but it is most definitely a recommendation from me as the city manager in terms of a staffing approach with the intent of trying to close the financial gap we've identified in what I'm calling our worst case scenario. I don't know that we have enough to go on to confidently say that's the worst case scenario, but as you know, we looked at 30, 60, and 90-day scenarios, and this staffing approach gets pretty close to closing that identified financial gap for the 90-day scenario. So we'll be prepared to make the presentation to you on Wednesday and discuss it in greater detail at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hodges here. I did have one final item under other business whenever it's appropriate.
Go ahead.
I had received a couple of inquiries from citizens who I'm sure we're all watching our recycling pile up, and we were wondering if there was any way that we could arrange for like a safe way for consumers to drop off their recycling. And I don't know if that's doable, but it's something that I think would be worth having a conversation about, because just speaking anecdotally about our experience, I've seen us go from one dumpster to 3 since we haven't been able to recycle. And I think that we're going to see that increase on our landfill as well. So it would be great if we could facilitate a conversation among staff to see if there's any way that we can safely accept recyclables.
Sure. I'd be happy to, Mike's Craig, would be happy to start that conversation at the staff level and report out. I think as we discuss staffing and the proposed staffing approach on Wednesday, I'm going to preface that with service levels across the board are going to be a significant point of conversation.
Right. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I will accept a motion, excuse me, to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll see everyone Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Thank you.